Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Dossa, Secretary and Treasurer of the Board of Directors of the Plaza Brickell. I'm very happy to have here with us the Mayor of Miami, Suarez, and our local Commissioner of the District 2, which is Commissioner Ken Russell here. And that's already many years that we are trying at the Plaza to get the attention of the Mayor. The previous Mayor, Thomas Regalado, was supposed to come 4 or 5 years ago, but he cancelled. And one of the reasons we are very happy to see them here today is that we at the board of the Plaza, we think that our community is not being given the attention that we deserve. And the mayor is going to speak later to you, and I think he's going to speak to you about the strong mayor proposition that we have on the election tomorrow at the election. And I wanted to know quickly, how many of you here voted or plan to vote? Okay, we do have a few people. Myself, I voted already, and I went Friday to vote. And we live in Brickell, which is a very big neighborhood, but I had to take my car to go to Shenandoah Library to vote. And when you go to Shenandoah is a neighborhood very close to Brickell, with exactly 1,500 homes. I counted them. Now, at the Plaza here, we are 2 towers with 1,000 condominiums. So if we were organized as a single family home, we will be almost as big. I mean, we will be 2/3 of Shenandoah. Now, if I take the 4 ambassadors, which is just across the street, they have 748 condominiums. So our neighborhood will be 1,748 condominiums. We will be bigger than Shenandoah. However, in Shenandoah, the city pays for police to patrol the streets. The city pays for city lights to brighten the streets. The city pays for trees, for landscaping. The city pays for electricity. The city pays for all of that. Here in our, what I call vertical community, we pay for all of that. And I am very happy that the mayor had this proposal of a strong mayor. I will share with you my vote, because I voted already Friday, and I voted for a strong mayor. Because when we are facing the administration of the city of Miami, we don't have anybody to really answer to us. When we need a permit, they make our life miserable, they make us jump through hoops and through issues and problems. And if we have a strong mayor, we will have somebody accountable. And if he doesn't deliver, I will be voting against him with great pleasure. So that will be it for introduction. I will let the mayor and the commissioner speak, and then I hope that later we'll have some time to ask a few questions. Mayor Francis Moyes.
Well, you really summarized it much better than I could. The strong mayor proposal that's on tomorrow's ballot, it's been sort of an interminable year for me. By the way, I completely agree with your entire characterizations of how beautiful Brickell and Brickell Bay Drive area is and how important it is to the city. And it really is important that we as elected officials come and speak to you and hear what you have to say. But we also need a system of government that reflects the ability for us to get the job done for you. Most major cities in Florida and most major cities in the United States have what is commonly referred to as a strong mayor form of government. What does it mean though? It basically means that the person that you chose, that you elected to be your mayor, whether it's me or someone else, that person has the administrative authority to make decisions. For example, I think Franz, in the email you sent, there was 2 or 3 different specific things that you talked about. Trees, you talked about a crosswalk, and I think you talked about trash cans, if I'm not mistaken, right? So if you are a strong mayor, if you have that administrative capacity or authority, I could literally pick up my phone right now and I could say to the Public Works Director, you need to put some garbage cans out there tomorrow. You need to start painting a crosswalk or else, and you need to expedite those permits for those trees. Not only do I not have the ability to do that as mayor, it would actually be a violation of the law. I would actually be guilty of a 3rd-degree misdemeanor if I picked up the phone and called the Public Works Director and told him that very same thing. And I could actually be removed from office. By the way, so could he. So we have this very, very arcane and weird system of government that people don't understand where you elect an elected official, but that person has to pick someone else to run the government, and then you can't tell that person what to do. It just doesn't make any sense. And so that's why cities like Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville, and all three of their mayors, by the way, Buddy Dyer, Len Curry, and Bob Buckhorn, all signed a letter to the editor urging Miami voters to vote yes, actually, on the initiative, and citing specific examples during their time as mayor that they can cite to transformative projects in their city that they could not have accomplished without being a strong mayor. A lot of people don't like the name. Some people call it executive mayor. Some people call it accountable mayor. Really, at the end of the day, it's simple. In our charter, you would be replacing the name city manager or administrator with mayor, and so then I would have the ability to make those phone calls and to make those decisions on your behalf. Not only are the major cities in Florida have a strong mayor, but Miami-Dade County has a strong mayor. Hialeah has a strong mayor. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Detroit, Washington, Boston. I mean, I think you guys, you get the drift. And most cities, by the way, a lot of smaller cities have what they call a weak mayor, where the mayor actually sits as a member of the commission. Coral Gables has that, Miami Beach has that, Doral has that. So what we have is this weird hybrid where the mayor is kind of like the Queen of England. You know, he's not Parliament and he's not the Prime Minister. And so he sort of sits out there as a ceremonial figurehead and has to basically take your email, right, Franz, and send it to the city manager in the hopes that that permit is expedited, or that tree is, that crosswalk is begun, or that those trash cans have been put out. By the way, we did that. We got the email, we did send it to the city manager, and it's patient ticket. Because you're absolutely right. You know, you are absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head with your email. Brickell Bay Drive and condominiums like this pay a lot of taxes, don't need a lot of services because they self-police in many cases, and like you said, they're improving their public spaces, really their own common areas, which they pay to maintain and they pay to improve. So the least that the city can do, I think, to make your lives easier and to help you beautify your own assets and your own properties is to make things easy. That's one of the reasons why one of my initiatives was to create electronic plans to help the permitting process, to make it faster. We rolled that out just about a month ago, and we're doing a variety of things to try to be more user-friendly as a city. I'm a fairly young person, I'm 41 years old. I was born in the city of Miami. I love this city. I was a commissioner for 8 years. I went to school here, high school here, and I went to college here as well. And I went to law school. That was my only defect. I left for law school. But I came back and I've been living here ever since, and I plan to live here for many, many years to come. And I think, I personally believe that this is the most beautiful city in the world. I think everybody wants to be here, but certainly there are things that we need to do together as a community, as a commission and mayor, to continue to make this a wonderful city. One of the things that we did together in our budget was we put $6 million for beautification. It had never been done before. Something as simple as, and you would think with $1 billion budget, we dedicate some money to beautification. We had never dedicated any money to beautification, and now we're starting, if you saw in Brickell, we're starting to beautify the landscapes. I know there was a little controversy over the swales and the, what's that?
Fake grass.
The fake grass. So there's some controversy over the fake grass. But it was all done in good faith to try to beautify the area. And we're doing Christmas lights on Brickell Bay Drive as well, something that the community's been asking for a long, long time. We're doing Christmas lights also along Core Way. I mean, these are things that really instill pride in our city and make people feel a sense of community. And so again, we want you all to know that we're dedicating resources to make your city beautiful, so that you can be proud of it and it can be clean as well. So I'm urging you all to go out tomorrow. If you haven't already voted, please vote yes on. It's ballot number 382. It's literally the last item on your ballot. It's an 8-page ballot, 4 pages double-sided, and it is the last one, and it's the Strong Mayor Initiative. So thank you. I don't know if you have any questions.
We do, but
okay.
Maybe Commissioner want to make an introduction of himself
sure.
also, and then we will open the floor for questions.
Merci, Paul. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for having the mayor and myself. My name is Ken Russell. I'm your City of Miami Commissioner. I'm just finishing my 3rd year in office as Commissioner of Coconut Grove, Brickell, Downtown, Edgewater, up to Morningside. So the long strip of the water of the city, and obviously the big bulk of the tax base of the city. My primary job is as a legislator to set policy for the city, to approve budgets of the city. But really, as you elect me, the buck stops with me to help advocate for residents and get your issues taken care of. So constituent services are a big part of our job, even as where the mayor expressed it's very difficult for us. We've learned to do this dance when we talk with administration and we want them to do something. As we legally cannot tell them to do something, we learn to ask in the form of questions in ways that are not imperatives, but still get the message across, and hopefully that gets things done. I need to maintain a very good relationship with the city manager in order to get a lot of these things done. I was even guilty of a vote to remove the city manager a few years ago, as we were trying to get things, get the commission, listened to, because a lot of times it's very hard. So these processes, it's a big part that we shouldn't have to deal with, but we do. So I have a tremendous staff. I wanted to introduce Abigail Mahoney, who's right here on the side. Abigail, we can get applause. Abigail deserves the applause, though, because she really is, she's my district director for everything north of the Rickenbacker Causeway. So as I mentioned, it includes the Grove and Golden Pines and everything south. Abigail manages not only constituent services, business services, anyone who needs help that can't get me in the day, Abigail is available and coordinates where I need to be, which things I need to be answering personally, which she can actually solve on her own directly with administration. So that is primarily at the end of the day our job, because if we don't do it, we won't be reelected. And it's very important that your quality of life is prioritized. So Brickell is growing. It's become a big center of families. And there's a lot of new needs that weren't here 10 years ago. A lot of the big things we need, I know there's a lot of little things that you fight for, but there's big things that need to be fixed. Infrastructure issues, drainage issues, seawall issues. In the last year, the last 2 years, I pushed to have a general obligation bond passed. We passed it at the commission after a couple of years of going back and forth and getting it right. And then it went to the voters. And I advocated for the voters to pass this bond, and you all approved $400 million that the city can go out for now, half of which has to be spent on sea level rise and resilience issues, and another quarter of it on affordability within our city, and that has to do with rental and purchase price of condos, everything. And so that was a really big accomplishment for you as residents to have voted for that, put your trust in us. Now it's our job to spend that money. So over this next year, and even the coming commission meetings, we'll be looking at how that money is spent. So you want to be a squeaky wheel through your advocates who become your liaison to Abigail and myself to make sure that what you care about is fixed. The little things on the day-to-day basis and the big things that you want to see fixed. So I'm your servant. I'm here to help in any way I can. And I know you have a list of questions for us tonight, so I'll stop talking and let the folks be heard. So thank you.
I'm going to thank you very much. Should I open the floor for question, or I start with a question already?
Yeah, I have a question.
Can you name yourself and where
Yeah, my
you
name is
live?
Mike Armantano. I own the other tower. I've been here since 2008. My family's originally from Miami. I understand. First of all, thank you both for coming. We appreciate the time. You guys are busy, especially in the right election. So thank you for coming and explaining the strong mayor situation and everything else. But I have a question. So I think probably the number one issue that we as a community have is that basically the traffic and the crosswalk behind it is basically like from a third world country. Literally, when you cross the street, you're taking your life in your own hands. So I got the idea about the strong mayor and why you guys can't just say make a phone call, but I still don't understand why the city won't do that. So you can't tell the commissioner to do that. But why hasn't the commissioner done that? That's just a basic. So if I look at Brickell Bay Drive, I see where the developer put brand new asphalt, it's beautiful. Developers' rights are always protected. And then I see where the developer area stops, and it's like, I mean, your life is in your own hands.
So when a developer builds a building, the city requires that developer to improve not only the development itself, but the public space that's adjacent to the development. That's why when they build a building, that area gets improved at the same time as the development itself. That still does not excuse the fact that the part that's beyond that development should not seem inferior, should not be inferior. In fact, it probably makes a lot of sense if someone is going to be improving a public right-of-way next to a development, that the city should do likewise and continue that improvement going forward. So the problems that we face are more structural in nature in terms of what we can and cannot do, in terms of what we can and cannot tell people to do. I think we unfortunately have prohibitions. I can't write an email saying, I just got out of a community meeting, you know, I'm embarrassed. You know, go out there tomorrow and start paving the street, you know, from point X to point Y. Right? It's a violation of the law. It's actually a third-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 60 days in jail and removal from office. So it doesn't make any sense. It's weird. I understand that it's very strange, which is why, you know, I take the time to come to community meetings and explain it. You know, not just try to change the system of government. I've been here for 9 years. He was a commissioner for 3 years. I was a commissioner for 8 years. And so I've been through this for 8 years. I tried to change it twice as commissioner. I tried to change it in 2011. And I tried to change it again in 2016 when I was the chair of a charter review committee that voted 11-1 to put the strong mayor on the ballot. And I wasn't successful on either occasion getting it on the ballot. This time, I had to actually go out and help finance an effort to get petitions. So we got 20,000 petitions from City of Miami residents. And then the commission, I think, wisely put it on the ballot, because if they had not put it on the ballot, it would have cost you all as taxpayers about $1.5 million to have a special election just for that issue. So I think they made the right decision. But I think at the end of the day, what you all expect as a resident is you expect, I'm going to leave you, when you leave here, you'll have my cell phone number, right? Everyone here will have my cell phone number. But you expect to be able to call me or text me. You usually ask for a text. If someone's calling me, like right now, if somebody's calling me, I'm not going to answer. I'm not going to be rude to you, right? But if you text me, it's preserved. So when I get in the car, I have the list of text messages that I have to respond to. Yes, no, I'll get back to you. Let me forward it to whoever, right? But I think the expectation is that when you reach out to the mayor, and we're still small enough that you can have you should be able to have personal contact with the mayor, right? That person can make decisions. And that those decisions are supposed to enhance your quality of life. And by the way, if they make a mistake, then they can also reverse a decision and have the ability to undo something. Because at the end of the day, you chose me, or maybe you didn't, I don't know, but I'm saying you chose the mayor. You chose the mayor, and you didn't choose the city manager. And you can't recall the city manager. You can't change the city manager. We've had situations, as Commissioner Rosso was saying, we had a situation where, and this wasn't here in Brickell, where the city manager fired an employee of the city because the employee supposedly was under investigation. Turns out the employee was exonerated. The entire community was incensed at the fact that this employee had been hired, because this employee was doing a phenomenal job. They had deep community roots. We had an entire section of the city come out. Over 100 people came out in favor of the employee. All 5 commissioners unanimously told the city manager, you should not fire the employee. The city manager said, I'm sorry, I'm firing the employee. So we couldn't even hold the city manager accountable. Then when we tried to fire that city manager, we didn't have the necessary 4 votes to do it. So it creates a lack of accountability. And I believe in accountability. I think that if I'm elected and if I'm going to work hard every single day to make this city great, then I should have the tools to make it great. And that's what I'm asking for.
I agree. I'm totally for the strong mayor proposal, but I still don't understand, how do we get it done right now?
You're looking for a crosswalk that doesn't exist, or a repaving of a broken road?
No.
It was an existing crosswalk, but when the construction guys came in,
It's in very bad condition.
a traffic light.
Yeah, it's in very, I think I know which one you're talking about. It's in terrible condition. It's like falling apart. And
It's not even there anymore.
Okay, got it.
I mean, basically across the street, you got, I just hope you don't get hit, basically.
So here's where the next steps on something like this. This would be either a capital improvements project. This would be either a capital improvements project or a public works fix. And so those 2 departments, public works, if it's just pothole patching, maybe a light resurfacing, they can come in and do it. A restriping issue of a crosswalk that's failed, they can do that. If it looks like it's a bigger level thing that needs drainage and everything else like that, then it needs a capital improvements project. You get a B number, which actually means the project exists. It may not be funded yet, and then it comes to me as the commissioner to fund that project and to allocate a piece of the budget and convince my other commissioners to use a piece of the city's general fund to fund that project. So that's where we can advocate for that issue. But it may be as simple as resurfacing. So I'll definitely look into that, and we will. We'll talk to Public Works and Capital Improvements and see where that is within their plans at the moment.
Okay. So just to follow up, so I think there's
Can
probably
you tell us where you live also?
Sorry.
Because then,
Right, Whit, I live here in this tower. I've been here about 10 years. I'm an attorney down in downtown. Appreciate you coming. Also, my wife was actually in a commercial for you for the Strong Mayor. So I'm all for it. I know your sister. I work with people that know you. I think the issue with the crosswalk is, unless you live it every day, you may not get what I think almost everyone in this room feels, right? If you are in this building and you have children, the places that you can go to a playground, you have to cross Brickell Bay Drive, right? There are no crosswalks where you actually have paint on the ground. There's no lights like you have in Coconut Grove, where you cross the road and there's blinking lights. There's nothing. So between this tower, the other tower, the 4 ambassadors, the yacht club, the 100-story building that just went in next door, there are thousands of people that can't cross the street safely. There's also lanes that shift for no particular reason. So as cars are driving, they go over into the wrong side of the road. You have cars lining the sides of the street because of street parking. So basically, when you're trying to get onto the road to cross the street, you can't see if a car is coming. So all of those things together make it extremely unsafe. There's already one woman that was killed on that road a couple of years ago, and it's just not a safe place to be. Every time, the only solution that I've seen in 10 years is basically they put a sign in the middle of the road that says, "Watch out for pedestrians." Every morning, that sign is knocked over because someone hits it, right? There is nothing to protect people. Then you have the 4-way cross over by the yacht club, the bar, that there's no stop sign. So you have cars going north-south with no stop sign, and the other cars have it. Then you have cars peeking out from, behind other cars with their street parking. It's extremely unsafe. And so for 10 years, I've sent emails. I know other people, I'm sure people have sent emails. Nothing has been done. And so I think what is necessary is to have lights at the crosswalk like you do in Coconut Grove, where people can cross and there's something blinking to tell people to stop, because you're going to have other people killed on that road. And so I think that's the solution that needs to happen.
Thank you. No, that makes perfect sense. And I'm not going to pass the buck, but I'll tell you there's another layer involved here, which is the county, which controls the flow of traffic and the pedestrian crossings and where we can put them and what style we can use. I'm not saying that means we're not going to get it done. That means we now have to advocate for it for you. And I think it's a very good thing to do, because like I said earlier in my speech, that Brickell has become so family-oriented, where it wasn't 10 years ago. We have much more need for pedestrian safety than we did before, and I think this is a no-brainer that we should advocate for.
You may want to invite them to come and just watch from the corner and just watch that street. I'm on the 52nd floor. They can look out of my window and just watch for 20 minutes and see what the problem is, right? It's very easy to see when you're looking at it, for a few minutes.
I have a 4-year-old and I have a 6-month-old, so I completely understand the craziness of and the fear, obviously, when you live particularly in an area like this where there's so much volume of cars. I personally have been fighting with the county for a while for them to understand that the volume and speed of traffic is a huge issue in the city of Miami, not just here, but everywhere, okay? And the one thing I do want to maybe have a follow-up meeting on this as well, and I think you're right, we should invite the county to the meeting. There's always a conflict, because when we say, let's say for example, one potential solution that we've tried in other places is speed tables, right? Like actual, it forces people to literally slow down, and it's a physical impediment, right? As opposed to a sign which can get knocked over, or a police officer which may or may not be there, it's temporary sort of. I would love something like that. At least to try it. What I've learned is that, number one, whatever we do in terms of traffic mitigation, we've got to have the community's support. Because we try things in other areas and then there's backlash. Sometimes people don't, like it. And I even had people like complain about. I'll go to a room full like this, what I would consider homeowners association, and we'll get community input. We'll make a decision, and then people will come out of the woodwork and say, "How did you do that? We were consulted. How would you, And we're like, wait a minute. We met with the community. And by the way, there's never 100% consensus. So it's impossible that we're going to walk out of any room with a solution that everybody is going to approve. So that's another thing. So from a process perspective, I think one of the things that I want to talk to you guys about going forward is just a process for how we make these decisions to make sure that we're making good decisions that the community supports, and communicating clearly to people that we work with, like the county. And if it's a matter of bringing them here, we bring them here. And if it's a matter of doing, like you said, we have more ways to communicate than ever. Right now we have Nextdoor, we have Facebook, we have all these kinds of platforms. So if it's a community meeting on the corner instead of next time in the hall, where we all meet there and we actually see a rush hour at 5 o'clock. Let's check it out and we bring all the relevant parties together, right? And then we as a community have to stick together, because again, if we do make a decision as a community and then people come from the outside saying, "Hey, why'd you do this? We weren't invited." We got to really make a concerted effort to try to include as many people as possible so that they at least feel consulted. They may not always agree. There may not be 100% consensus, but what I want to avoid, and I'm starting to see a little bit more of this, and I want to learn from it, right, is to make sure that we are broadening as much as possible the network of people that are involved in hearing what we're doing, inputting what we're doing, and helping us make our decisions so that we don't have to reverse them or anything like that.
So,
I'm sorry.
So I walk to work. I'm a Brickell resident for about 10 years. I walk to work, I live, work, play in Brickell, and this pedestrian issue is a huge issue. On a daily basis, I have a flashing light at night just so people see me. What about integrating like you said, you have to get other people involved. What about integrating the police just to monitor crosswalks and start giving tickets to people who are violating the crosswalk rules?
Yeah, people that are driving excessively fast. Because I think what's happening too is, people are just driving carelessly.
People don't even stop in crosswalks. Right. So you'll have the right to cross in a crosswalk.
Yeah, we can do that.
I want to make a point.
We can do that for sure. I mean, my issue is the long-term solution. That's what worries me, is that, certainly if we put a police officer there for whatever period of time, in that period of time, you can assure that people will slow down and it will work. But the question is, how do you condition that response over a long period of time? So that's what worries me.
But as a short-term fix.
Sure, we can do
before
that.
someone else dies.
We can absolutely do that.
I want to make a point on that, and then I will ask you two questions. In Miami Beach on West Avenue, they have this problem of people crossing, and it was a very dangerous area. So what the police of Miami Beach did is that they put a police officer in plain clothes, and this guy will be there, and when he sees a car coming, he's just going to start crossing the street. If a car doesn't stop to give the priority to a pedestrian, there are some police officers later to stop this car and ticket it. So they did it for years, and it was very efficient to slow down the traffic and to increase the respect of pedestrians on West Avenue. The police of Miami here is totally invisible, worthless, lazy. I mean, I saw them when we have construction. You will see a lot of traffic due to the construction, and you will see two police officers who are there paid by maybe, I don't know, but they are there and they see the traffic, and they don't even try to help the traffic go smoothly. They are just in their car watching YouTube. And I think, it's not.
They are here just for builders.
I know, but they are still police officers of the city of Miami in the official uniform and the official car. So now I want to bring two other questions quickly. One question is, I like to walk on the bay side. It's a very nice walk that we have, and we are not using enough our bay side because it's really beautiful. However, when you walk behind the Four Ambassadors, behind the Yacht Club, you come to the Villa Magna dump parking, where I don't know how they did that, but that's already several years that we decided to privatize the Baywalk, and you have to go around. This parking look like really like dirty. They don't have any trees around. They don't have any landscaping. He had like maybe 3 projects there. Maybe he's going to stay there for another 10 years due to the real estate market right now. and why our residents cannot use the Baywalk and how he was able to privatize that. So this is question one. I will give you question two, so then we can. Question two is that we recently had Panorama, which is like a huge building, being kind of like imposed on us. And we never had the opportunity to really participate and say as neighbors what we think. There is another project on the same Brickell Bay Drive to build a 65-story tower. Brickell Bay Drive, right here, the Yacht Club. So the Yacht Club wants to build a 65-story tower, and they almost got the approval. I went to the Miami Design European Review. They don't pay attention to anything. I don't know what they do there. But basically, we all live here. We should have a say if we want to see another 65-story tower being built on this little street. We should have a say. So my two questions is, this parking spot, why we cannot walk on the water, and then why, as neighbor, we cannot give our input when we see some out of range development being imposed on us.
Can I add to that? It's not only visibility of the big tower, it's also the infrastructure is not ready to receive a 65-story tower. You know, the lanes need to be wide. I mean, that's bringing traffic to a pedestrian area. So it's not only visible pollution, but traffic-wise. Brickell's pedestrian.
Absolutely. Let me take the first question, which had to do with the Baywalk and the Riverwalk. I'm also chairman of the Downtown Development Authority, which runs all the way down to 15th, but also all the core of downtown. And it's become one of my legacy missions, if you will, by the time I'm out of office to see this come to fruition, which is our 5-mile linear park on the water, which is our Baywalk. When I got into office, I realized it's in our legislation that anyone who develops on the water has to set aside 50 feet from the water for the public, 25 feet for a sidewalk, and 25 feet for a buffer to their property. And that's their obligation, it's not a choice. But they only trigger that requirement when they build. So if it's just sitting there as a parking lot with no structure on it, they don't have the legal requirement to do it. So I'm looking to bring legislation that will allow the city, because we can't force them to do it before they develop. They're not investing in the property. It's a huge investment to create that baywalk, build that seawall, whatever's necessary. That the city can invest in it up front, possibly using these general obligation bonds that you all helped pass that have to do with mitigation to sea level rise and storm surge. A good, strong barrier is a good baywalk and seawall. We could use those funds. And when that developer develops, he gives us back the money. So basically, it's borrowing money to give us this baywalk now, instead of the 20 years that this legislation's been in place, that we have a broken baywalk. There's 9 missing points. That's all that's left to complete the entire 5-mile linear park. And I have the personal promise of the owner at Villa Magna that he will give us, even though he's not developing yet, he will give us a temporary version that opens it up. That will be pavers across, that'll give protection from the parking lot, but they've already rebuilt the seawall there. The cap is all there, they just need to open it up and get access. And then all the way from Brickell Bay Drive, all the way up to up north and beyond, we'd have access. So that's one pinch point. There's a lot of other big ones I'm working on. The Genting site with the old Miami Herald building, which is a little further north of here, but that's the other biggest missing points. And then there's a few little ones here and there. But I'm going to need your support because that's something that you care about. There's sort of a misconception that this is just a sidewalk for the wealthy or for that building. This is an amenity for the entire city. And when it's fully complete, I think it's going to transform the way our downtown interacts with each other, north and south here, how we use it for not only enjoyment, but even a type of commuting with bicycles and scooters and who knows what. But so I'll need your help on that, and that's something I'm working on, I'm dedicated to, and keep an eye out for Villa Magna, because I have a promise there.
I am keeping an eye on
Yes. So I took the easy one, I'll let the mayor take the hard one.
I had no idea somebody wanted to build a 65-story building on Brickell Bay Drive.
Yes, at the Yacht
Where on Brickell Bay Drive?
At the Yacht Club, they have a project, and the project, I think the permit was adopted by the Miami Urban and Design Review Board.
But are they going for an outzoning? Because there's not allowable.
They had requested 6 variances, 6 exceptions to the Miami 21 zone code,
Right.
and they were granted these exceptions. So they had a tennis court, and they want to replace the tennis court by a huge 65-story tower.
Yeah, it doesn't make
Just when the street is.
Hasn't come to us yet. I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
Well, I mean, one thing that the mayor doesn't do, and I won't invent things that the mayor does, even as strong mayor. The mayor is not a legislator. I would be the chief executive. I would be in charge of the planning director, and so that would influence what the planning director's perspective and opinion is on these things. So when you talk about, over density, too much traffic, lack of infrastructure, if the mayor is a strong mayor, and I don't want to get too much on my soapbox tonight about this, but you do have the ability to set a culture and a tone with the planning department and saying, look, I feel as mayor, having listened to the residents, having come to neighborhood association meetings, that we're at the breaking point. We're beyond the breaking point. And so we just cannot recommend more massive upzonings in an area that is already overcrowded, overburdened with traffic, and not quite as resilient as it needs to be to deal with the climatic issues that we're seeing on an every year basis. We just, I'd say about 2 or 3 months ago, just finalized redoing the Brickell pump, which was raised a couple of feet to make it more resilient. We have now generated capacity, so we can plug in a generator to it, and it. I'm gonna mess these numbers up, but I think it can pump 32,000 gallons a minute, 34,000 gallons a minute. Geo is
Double check that, yeah.
I think it's 34,000 gallons a minute. So we're hoping that one and the one on 2nd Avenue will keep this area dry. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, what the mayor could do under the system of government would be to influence a recommendation of the administration, and then it would be up to the commission to decide whether they want to increase or not a zoning issue. I think Commissioner Russell, in his time as commissioner, has always protected the neighbors, and has always been someone who has been very, very hesitant to increase zoning unless there's a consensus among the community, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So yeah, I mean that's sort of where we stand. I could not have imagined a 65-story building on Brickell Way Drive right now.
We'll show you the plan if you want.
If they're building as of right, you don't necessarily have as much of a say-so at the table. Meaning, if they're building within the capacity that's allotted to them within our already decided planning and zoning, you don't have much of a say-so. It's when they want anything more than what they're entitled to, that you then have, no, they're on the water side across from Panorama.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Across Panorama.
They're right across from Panorama, on the water side.
There's a tennis court there right now,
Yes.
on top of the building.
And actually, you're going to have the 2 towers, the 82-tower Panorama, facing the 65-story tower, which hotel component.
Brickell Drive this side.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, that's what I was confused. It might be as of right there.
When they ask for an entitlement, that's when you have teeth, you have skin in the game, you have the ability to access public hearings. And beyond the Urban Design Review Board, but if it comes to commission, if an exception is appealed and it comes to commission, that's when the neighborhood needs to show up in strength and either be saying, no way over a dead body, or if this is going to happen, we want X, Y, Z, and ABC.
And let me just add to that. Maybe what we can do, and this is the first time that I come as mayor, but I'm happy to come as often as you'd like me to come. But maybe what we can do the next time is bring our planning and zoning director here.
Oh, yeah.
So you can get a perspective from him as to what is in the pipeline, what is being discussed, and he can also explain to you what your rights are. Because I think people need to understand that, like for example, if you said that they had done a bunch of exceptions or warrants or whatever, there are appellate rights. The neighbors can appeal under certain circumstances depending on what it is that the developer is asking for, and that could create a public hearing, which, as the commissioner was saying, allows for the commission to get involved in a zoning issue. So I'd love for you all to know what your rights are, educate you, and have the perspective of being able to advocate for your community.
That's a cool question on that. So instead of waiting until the next time we come back, or we understand you're a busy guy, can we just set up a conference call for next week and do that?
That's fine.
I have a WebEx that we can use.
On that project, you mean?
No, to talk to this resource, the planning development manager, and
Yeah.
to do it, actually, everything that you just said, but to do it on the phone instead of waiting until we come back in present.
Yeah, I don't have a problem doing that. I just want to make sure that everyone has the ability to participate.
Yeah.
But I have no problem doing that. We can. I've actually seen. We need this technology. We're doing it with the
Sparkboards.
No, we have this. The other technology we can do teleconferencing
You can
with
also
major audiences.
use the phone in this room and call into a WebEx.
We can certainly facilitate that for sure.
We have one question and then one question and then one
You got
question.
that,
and then
Gio?
I have-
Yes, sir.
You're good with that, Commissioner?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Giselle Samuel. I'm an owner of this building, and thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate you coming for the first time to our community. I'd like to know, do you have a process in place where you meet with other buildings in this neighborhood? And if so, could we be part of that system or that association of Brickell buildings? I know that we are the newer buildings, but it would be nice that, I think there are a lot of issues that really are pertinent to all of us in the community.
So basically, I meet with anybody that asks me to meet with them. I mean, that's sort of my MO. Anyone who knows me knows that I try to be very accessible. By the way, my cell phone number is 305. I have to have a 305. 992-3342. And there's only 2 rules, guys. There's only 2 rules about having my cell phone. The first rule is don't substitute me for 911. Okay? If you have an emergency, call 911. I'm in the bathroom. Yeah. If I'm in the bathroom, I'm not going to answer the phone. Okay? So if you have an emergency, call 911. And the second thing I would ask is to please text me your first and last name, because that way I can save your name so when you're calling me, I know who it is. And I have ways of like tagging it and making sure that I know where you're from, and et cetera, et cetera. So I try to be very efficient. But the bottom line is, I'm willing to meet with you as a building. I think this is a critical mass. This is a good critical mass of people. I'm willing to meet with you as a part of a larger organization.
Are you currently meeting with a larger
I meet with everybody.
organization that we could be a part
Yes,
of?
I meet with everybody. The closest one here is Brickell Homeowners Association. There's also on the other side of the river, the river, there's a Downtown Neighborhood Alliance. Then there's a Biscayne Neighborhood Association. So you've got, every segment has sort of like a master association, if you will. But I have absolutely no problem. And this is a huge building, like you were saying. You're talking about 1,000 units. So I have no problem also coming. I mean, this is a pretty good crowd. So what actually concerns me is the opposite. In other words, we make decisions, and this is happening a lot lately. I'd say in the last 24 months, this happened to me on a couple of occasions. I had a pretty good career, 8 years of commissioner. When I was elected mayor, I was elected by 91% of my district. And that was because I tried to be transparent, accessible, and all those things. But what I'm starting to see in the last 24 months is different forums that are popping up, virtual forums, right, that are popping up. And then what happens is we make a decision and people feel left out.
Yeah.
They're feeling like we were never consulted. And so what I want to make sure is that I avoid that. You know, I want to make sure that...
That's what I'm asking, if you have a process in place or a system in order to avoid that, so at the end of the day, it's more efficient for all of us.
Your treasurer, right?
Yes.
Your treasurer just reached out to me and said, hey, can you come?
I know.
And I said, absolutely, no problem, I'll be there. And so that's usually the way it works. But the answer is we have to refine and get better at how we're communicating with the broader community, because what we're seeing is a higher level of engagement, more platforms. It also gets a lot noisier, right? So we have to figure that out too.
That's the whole thing that, you know, how are we going to work that out, especially, I mean, we're very appreciative, we just want to be efficient.
Well, look, again, I think this is a community that's large enough to have its own meetings, because clearly, I mean, and you guys seem plugged in, and I like that. But I also think it's good to attend the other meetings because here's what also happens. We may do something or make a decision that impacts like a crosswalk, right? Let's go back to the crosswalk example. And I leave here super gung-ho, let's do the crosswalk, this is awesome. And then I get 5 presidents from 5 buildings saying, what the hell are you doing? You're doing construction on our street. Don't you see how much construction there is? I'm like, I'm building a crosswalk for the building that just asked me for a crosswalk, you know? So that kind of stuff happens too. So I think there needs to be interaction among the buildings as well. So I'm all yours, you know, in terms of figuring it all out and trying to find a fluid way of communicating. It's not just a Brickell problem, by the way. This is a citywide issue, and it's a citywide dynamic. And obviously, you know, I'm trying to get better at it.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I want to pitch in with another question.
To bump on your question, there is a Brickell homeowner association. They have an old building south of Brickell. It's older people. They are very happy with everything. They don't have any. I mean, I went to the meeting and I was like, man, what is this? I'm wasting my time. So we're trying to find like a newer association with more recent buildings, with younger people, and we are more combative, we want more things, and we will keep more pressures on the commission underneath.
By the way, I'll get in trouble if I didn't say that there's also a Brickell Bay Homeowners Association.
Yep.
You get in big trouble, Chalene will be calling me the minute I leave the door saying, I cannot believe you didn't talk about our homeowners. So there's a Brickell Bay Homeowners Association, which is traditionally the buildings that are, I guess, I don't know, on the other side of the Jade, between the Jade and the older buildings are a little lower. And then there's a Brickell Homeowners. So again, I'm willing to, I work a lot and I come to a lot of these meetings regularly, especially at the beginning, so that there's a comfort level, and then you sort of find a rhythm. And the rhythm is, you don't want to be meeting just for the sake of meeting.
Exactly.
You want to meet to get things done, make decisions, and be part of a master planning process. And you find that rhythm. Sometimes you have to start off more frequent, like monthly or even weekly, and sometimes bi-weekly or whatever. The gentleman was just asking for a meeting next week with the planning director. In other words, sometimes you have to kind of jumpstart it, and then once you sort of come over that threshold, right, you figure it out.
I have a question, sorry, I will preempt you.
And this question is also actually for Commissioner Campbell. We haven't spoken yet about the Brickell Bridge, and I think that everybody will say that the Brickell Bridge is a kind of a nightmare. Here at the Plaza, we created a system where we have a sign at the exit of our parking, and this sign used to be connected with the Brickell Bridge. When the Brickell Bridge will open, we will get a sign, and we will know, don't go right, go left. Because if you go right, you're going to waste 15 minutes of your life. If you go left, you can go to 13 Terrace and kind of avoid that. Now, the Miami DDA deactivated this sign 3 years ago. We cannot find a valid person to say why it is not working, and this solution should actually be replicated all over Brickell, where we should have signs at every crosswalk telling people, Brickell Bridge is open, save your life, find another way. So we have the person from the DDA, and then the Brickell Bridge is a bigger problem, so I'm sure you will also address that, even if I know that there are no easy solution.
Thank you, Carl.
Sorry for preempting, you will have the next question.
Not at all, and I want to introduce James Jackson, also from my office. He's been our office manager, but he's venturing out into constituent services as well, just to make sure we've got more and more customer service. Let me just touch really quickly on the homeowners associations. What I would recommend, because you all don't have the time in your life to visit all of these, it's not only the BHA, which is the larger one, everything south of the river, the Brickell Bay Drive Association, which is a little closer to home. There's also the BAA, which is more business oriented, but that's really Brickell Key and surrounding. So that's also, what you want to do is just get on their mailing lists of each one of these. And it's an alphabet soup. It's the BNA, the DNA, the BHA, the BAA. There's a lot of them. But if you're interested, you'll just hear what they care about, what they're fighting for, and you can see whether you agree or disagree. And then you should push for your leaders, who you've elected to be your heads of your association, to start building friendships with the heads of those associations, strengthen numbers. And you can become an unstoppable force downtown, not only for advocacy, but for voting and everything else. As for the bridge, and I apologize, I'm so casual compared to our very sharp-looking mayor here. I've been out in the field all day today, and the last meeting I had before this one was about an hour and a half spent dealing with the Brickell Bridge. As chairman of the DDA covers both above and below the bridge, north and south of the bridge, and it's been a problem we've been pushing on for years. And the three parties that are involved basically are all the landlocked residents of the city, the businesses, buildings, and everything, who get stuck. And then we're fighting with the Coast Guard and the river businesses. So all up and down the river, there are companies who do shipping, who have freight liners, who just paint boats and fix propellers, and they want access up and down, and they have quite a strong lobby, even up to the federal government, which manages the Coast Guard, which sets all the times for the bridges. So at the DDA level, it's been a fight, just pounding on each other for years, and I've tried to bring collaboration to that. And so we held our first mediation session where we hired a professional mediator, that's like a marriage counselor, and the Coast Guard, the river group, and the Downtown Development Authority have basically come to some pretty close agreements. We're not quite there, and that was, we took it out of mediation and took it to a beer just before this, to see if we could settle some of the tensions and get to the next steps. The next step would be a traffic study that if they gave us an extra half an hour of closure in the evenings during rush hour where they couldn't open the bridge, how would that affect both the river and the city? So that study should be done this winter if everything goes well, and then we should be able to change those times early next year, I hope.
Excuse me, I have a question. I have a comment to make. Has to do with the crosswalks. This has to be done very strategically and well thought out because the influx of people and traffic has changed. Not to repaint the old ones, but there are two issues here. One, when you take a right in front of a building, you have those Lamborghinis that do 0.4, 60 miles an hour. So the location is about 100 feet from the traffic light. So that has to be rethinked. You need to think of over and over again. Also, across from the panorama building, that's just a blind curve. There's no stop sign there. People really fly. So what I'm begging you to do is to really study the locations of the crosswalk.
Yeah, if there's anything the government is not guilty of is moving quickly without a lot of consideration. So they won't let us put anything in without a full traffic study in the area. But if you, as residents, know the actual danger points, you bring those to us, we can really advocate for those within the traffic study. If it's a new four-way stop, or a traffic circle, or a crosswalk in a certain place. So we're glad to do that. But yes, trust me, there will be lots of studies.
We have like time constraints.
Can I get mine in really quick?
I want to have like maybe 1-2 questions because I know that the mayor and the commissioner are very busy.
I understand. Thank you both
Go
for
ahead.
your time. I'll be fast. I'm an attorney. I commute every day to the Justice Building, and my commute back is currently controlled by traffic coordinators. They sit by and they control traffic lights based on what they think is the right timing. So if I have to make a left, for example, off Brickell Ave on a Brickell Day, I might be waiting 20 minutes sometimes. I'm just wondering, can we take those people who are right now are not doing a whole lot and maybe make them crossing guards or just do something other than stand behind this machine they control the traffic lights with? I really think the system we have now for traffic lights isn't that bad and could handle the rush hour. And I think these people just make it worse because they subjectively think I should make it green left here or I should skip this cycle green left there. I mean, we're paying them to stand there. The question is just, can we pay them to stand there and help kids across the street after school, or do we want to pay them to control light cycles?
No, I don't think we've got, I would imagine that we've gotten past human beings controlling light cycles. It should be, because, it should be, it should be automated.
I agree. Maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding is they stand there and they control certain lights.
And I don't know, are they the ones wearing blue shirts?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought those were meant to manage some of the traffic, some of the internal flow problems.
They just stand there and control the light, and they don't help anyone cross, or they usually just stand. And I don't want to say they're not doing their job. It's just maybe we could redefine them into something better.
I got you. Yeah, and again, part of what's good about doing this and having this meeting is we get to know what the problems are. So when we come back, we can bring members. We have a 4,500 member bureaucracy, right? Employees. So normally when we come to a homeowners association meeting, we know, and you did a good job of giving us an insight as to what the issues were going to be, and we'll bring members of the staff, to come in here and say, okay, we're going to assign this person this task, and then you can relay back with that person and get follow-up, so that your concern is addressed.
And I don't want you to snap your fingers and make it better. I figure I'd bring that out and see if other people.
What I guess came to mind to me, and not that I'm assuming that the answer is probably because we have a really hard time giving up our cars. We just approved and I don't know if this is popular or not here, I hope it is, but the electric scooters. So I don't know if they are or not, but I'm wondering if anybody, do you use the Metro Mover at all?
I go to Justice, so I can't really use it. I mean, I could take the mover to the train.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways to get to that area, that Jackson area, but it doesn't make sense for me. I do drive a car.
Okay.
You approve the scooters, you said? Are they insured, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they going to have a designated place to park those? I'm sorry to take anyone else's questions or
I
time.
believe so.
There will be. The program is being enacted now. The legislation finally passed, and it's the 5 companies that are looking to come in will provide a licensing fee of about $250,000 that we're going to immediately put into fortifying our protected bicycle lanes, whether it's painting them green, putting reflectors, whatever it is, which will help cyclists and scooters. But yes, there's a whole system of liability issues and instruction, encouraging helmet use, all sorts of things, because we know it can be dangerous, but we do see it as a really potential good solution for downtowners to get from the Metro Mover to work or to lunch really quick without using a car, and so it should be launching in January-ish.
Okay, I promised the mayor and the commissioner that we will stick to 1 hour. I want to thank them for coming. That's a long time we wanted them to come. They can see that we're a community that's more and more engaged. We have a lot of suggestions. I have a lot of suggestions for traffic patterns, for things, and I'm happy that now the door is open for us to bring suggestions and to try to improve our community and our neighborhood. I want to thank Mayor Francis Suarez and Commissioner Dossa. I want to remind all of you that you have to vote. The more you vote, the bigger our voice. And thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Sir.